he wasn't in the closet. He was living a gay life. This was the part of his life that wasn't real. But he was actively doing that. So that's the surreal bit for us. The person we are talking about is the person that was the husband and the stepfather, not the public person or the person on the stage. This is our real lives, our mental health, our physical health is affected by the decision that he took to do that interview. And I think it's been completely misrepresented by a lot of the press that have come since that, because, as I said, it has nothing whatsoever to do with his sexuality. We would never have had a problem with his sexuality or anything like that. It was the deception of that that has led us to this point. And also now we're dragged into the public arena, which we would never have done. I have never done a solo media interview in my life. It's not something I ever wanted to do. But I felt that I had to speak because I would like to put some things on record to just, you know, maybe have my say. It was horrendous past 8 months. The worst time in my life was when I found out what was actually going on behind my back. But I can honestly say now that that was replaced with the last 2 weeks. There are people asking, why did I not know? And then the other part of it is, he said things that were very, very personal to me, and I would like the opportunity to respond to them. But when you say, well, how did I not know? I didn't know because I was being lied to by somebody that I trusted. And I was constantly, when I would approach something or get suspicious, I would get the act pretty similar to what he did on Friday. And I believed it. And I wouldn't have had any reason then to question that my reality was anything but a normal relationship. We met at a funeral of a mutual friend, and we spent a lot of that day together because we went to the reception and, you know, further on into drinks in a pub, and we were having conversations, we were in the same company, and after that we made a few attempts to meet. I wasn't really looking for a relationship. I was looking for a social outlet, a bit of fun, and we started to keep in touch, and then there was a few attempts at dates, and then eventually we did go on a date. Again, I was casual, but things happened very fast then. And he told me very quickly how much he cared about me, how much he loved me. I was completely overwhelmed with the level of attention, adoration, love. I was love bombed. I was put on a pedestal. I was told I was amazing. I was currently working full time. I had 2 small children. I had my own home. And we fell in love. Well, I certainly fell in love. And I was led to believe that he fell in love.
Looking back now, do you think he loved you?
Absolutely not. You couldn't possibly do for 24 years what he has done to me and to his stepchildren if you loved them. You absolutely couldn't.
Did you ever suspect Tommy was gay?
I suspected that he may have been meeting men, yes, and sometimes things didn't feel right, and I did ask, I did question, I did approach the subject, And he was asked straight out, and he had many opportunities, which I said to him that he should take if that's what he wanted, or he was in any doubt. And I always got just enough credibility and accountability to sway me back into believing that he was committed to this relationship, and that this relationship was one of faithfulness, honesty. Those were the two things that meant the most to me. If he had come to me any day in 24 years, any day, and said that he was gay, then I would have loved him, helped him, probably went on and worked with him. And it has nothing to do with his sexuality. It's to do with the level of deceit and lies and the lengths he went to and the decisions he took to undertake what he was doing, ongoing, for the whole relationship. That's the bit that's killing us, that's killing me. We were, I thought, happy. I even thought that up to 2025. Yes, we were having problems. He was depressed. He was discussing the reasons why. I was there to support him. And I honestly believed we'd work through it. But yes, we were happy for a while. We had some very, very difficult times. You know, we had court battles back in 2006, 7 and 8, hugely stressful, hugely costly. But I fought every one of those battles because I believed I was invested in this. I was invested in him. I was invested in our relationship, our future. And it was a plan, and we invested in a business, products, CDs, recordings. It was a plan. It was a plan for this stage of our lives. And yes, there were things that I now know were wrong. The first thing was I heard a phone message that was left for him from a man arranging to meet, and it didn't sound like a meet for a meeting. And I approached it, and I was again assured, given explanations, reassured, and he loved me so much he wouldn't dream of anything like that, and I had it completely wrong. But I felt about a year into it that something wasn't right. I felt he was hiding things from me. I felt that he was possibly having an affair, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And I told him I was finishing the relationship, that I knew he wasn't honest with me. And at that point, he had the big reveal that he was addicted to cocaine and that he had huge debt. Well, I felt that that was the answer to my gut screaming at me, and then we went about sorting that out, and he went then to rehab. At the time I paid for it, and he provided the list of debts, which included a large amount of unpaid mortgage payments on his parents' house that he now had at that time. And then I went about sorting that out, and he went to rehab. I knew that he couldn't be here with 2 small kids in the house. I didn't know anything about drugs. I would have been completely naive to it. But he went, and I was included in that, and I was allowed to be a participant of it, and there was accountability, and there was all of that throughout it. And he told me he was delighted that he was finally telling his truth, and that it was now all in the open, and how much he adored me and loved me. And he wrote to me every single day, as I did to him for the 30 days. And when he came out, I believed he was clean, and I believed he stayed clean for a few years anyway. I now know, or I have an idea when he broke and when he relapsed. But honestly, I was relieved that we had fixed both those problems and made a plan, and then I started to become more involved in his career.
So were there subtle signs over the years that he might have been cheating?
Well, at one stage, I found or seen the Grindr app on his phone, and obviously my heart did a somersault and I questioned it, and it caused a lot of debate and a lot of upset. And yes, that was another red flag, and I was again convinced, always given enough explanations. I was told time and time again that he was devoted to me, he loved me, he couldn't be without me, he would never leave, he was committed to every part of it, and he was very, very good at convincing me. And every time that I got close or that I tried to push something, it was twisted back, and the reality of it was totally different.
Even though he was protesting his innocence, your gut instinct, deep down, did you ever feel, God, maybe he is gay, or did your gut instinct tell you otherwise?
In the last few years, there were a couple of incidences and there were questions asked, and yes, we asked him, as did a lot of our friends. And you know, at any point, we're such an open family, and at any point he could have said it. And I still hate to be speaking about the gay part, because it is just so not about that. And you know, he wasn't in the closet, he was living a gay life. This was the part of his life that wasn't real, but he was actively doing that. So that's the surreal bit for us. For me, the reality of what I thought my life wasn't real. There was no part of it real. It was fake, and it was orchestrated to be that way, and for whatever gain, I don't know. And I would love to be told why. And you know, to continue to hurt us by this public display of coming out. It's 2026, it's ridiculous. He went to Australia in December 2022, first of all, for a PR trip. And he came back from that violently ill, very unwell. And we had concerts before he went, and he left the last night, heading for Dublin Airport, and he was crying and upset and didn't want to go. But he went, and then he came back violently ill, and he had a bug, and we were none the wiser of what that was. And then we move on then to October 2023, when he's gone for 6 weeks. And again, he was very upset leaving, and how much he would miss us, and how he never was doing these long tours again. But I had a sense of the preparation for that was not normal. There was a lot of care and attention into the personal side of that, not the business side of it. And we were well aware that that tour was going to lose an awful lot of money. Just new wardrobe, hair, you know, in general, preparing like you would for holidays. It just didn't feel right. And I had an uncomfortable feeling about it. Now, Becky and Andy had just got engaged as well, and they were having their engagement party while he was away, and my 60th was while he was away. And you know, there was part of me down to the day he left, thinking that he is not going to miss these very special family occasions. He's going to cancel. But he didn't, he went. So the first day he arrived, he was there about 12 hours, and he was changing his SIM card to an Australian number. And whatever he did, he managed to switch his messages through the Apple ID that we were sharing to my phone. and a message came to my phone to say, I'm just down the road, described where they were, and explaining where. I just knew it was somebody he knew. And there was a profile picture on it, and I looked at that, and it was clear that the picture was taken at Sydney Pride. So yeah, I was devastated. My whole world just collapsed. I was traumatised, and I had 2 huge occasions coming up, and I answered back the text and I said, who's this? And they told me they were from the gym that I would have known he was going to be attending there. I knew that was wrong. In my gut, I just knew. I felt that I had stumbled on the proof that I had been coming so close to so many times, but had constantly been distracted from, or constantly been talked out of, talked around, just convinced always that he was devoted to me. I rang the gym and I asked, did they have a person working of that name? And they said no, and they never did. So I left it for a few hours. I was distraught. I didn't know what to do. I figured it was the end of our relationship, and I was confirming what suspicions I may have had. So he rang me then, and I knew he knew, and he kept asking me, was everything okay? I sounded different. I sounded funny. Was everything okay? And I just said, I know you know. So he went into denial mode, and he denied, and he pleaded, and he begged. And for those 6 weeks, I had told him that it was best that we went our separate ways, and that we had the 6 weeks apart, so that it was probably a good thing. And he told me he went to the police station in Australia to find this person, and he told me that somebody had him set up, and he told me that he had searched high and low and he didn't know this person, and he was totally distraught. He rang our friends constantly. He was on the phone to somebody every night. He couldn't come back if he couldn't be with me. He couldn't survive if he didn't have this relationship. It was all a lie, and he wasn't going to be put down for something that he didn't do and that he knew nothing of it. And yes, then we doubted, and we were told that we abandoned him and that he felt isolated, and that we should be believing him as a family and we should stand by him. So he came home after the 6 weeks, and he arrived here, and he was very, very frail, very sick. And to be honest, we were really shocked with what we witnessed. And we had to go straight into work, a tour here. And everybody that seen him was concerned about his health and what was wrong. And he claimed it was because we all accused him of these absolutely hideous things, and that there is no way he could possibly consider them. And the fact that we could even think them was just awful, and that we abandoned him. And we welcomed him home with open arms and told him we loved him and that we were sorry for thinking those things. And that conversation came up many times since. And I had said to him, I gave you an out when you were in Australia in 2023, and you didn't take it. But things aren't going so well for us. This may have been 24 and 25. And I said, should you have taken it? And he said, absolutely not. I love you. I'm with you. I'm faithful to you. And I want to be with you for the rest of my life. And I'll do whatever it is that I have to do to make that happen. But I know now that he stole 24 years
probably the best 24 years of my life. For my mental health, my physical health, my work in life, my future, my house, my financial security. It's all in risk. And I'm absolutely beyond broken. And I cannot understand how anybody could knowingly take 1 hour of somebody's life for their own personal gain, not even 24 years. It just doesn't bear thinking about. And that's something that I know I will never comprehend. I know my road ahead is very long. And I have to put one foot in front of the other. And I will. But it was so unnecessary for everybody involved. For him, that now says he was living a lie, that he didn't need to live. He didn't need to go and make this big public announcement. When all of this came to light, there was one very important thing to me in our agreement, whatever it is to be, of the separation. But the most important thing to me was I wanted a confidentiality clause. I never wanted any of this to be discussed for whatever reason. I never wanted it. The first thing I found were some emails that were unusual and receipts that were unusual. You know, simple things, staying in a hotel that you're in on your own, and there's 2 toasted sandwiches ordered and 2 Cokes at 11:20 at night. It's not normal behaviour. Meals, lunches for 2 people, you're on your own. Then emails from hotel for fines, for rooms being destroyed, sheets being destroyed. And it's all starting to build up and it's all starting to come together. And you then question, why is there so many Revolut payments? Oh, why is that Revolut account not the same one? Then you start to realise there's several accounts. Then you start to go back and look at transactions. And then I started to realise, right, there's something much, much bigger going on here. So yes, we looked then into the Google history, and that tells you what you looked up, what you went to, where you went to on your Google Maps, what you looked at on YouTube, what you bought from your cards that are in your account, what you were paying for, everything. And it all led to a horrendous, terrifying double life. We had a normal marital relationship up to about 2020. And he slept in the same bed as me every night until mid-September. And he hugged me and he kissed me. And if you're doing drugs and sex ongoing for 20 years, then you put my health and my well-being at a huge, huge risk. And that's unforgivable. I had absolute confirmation that all of these things had taken place, but I was getting avoidance, I was getting denial, and I was in a place where I was totally, totally frustrated with the lack of any accountability, apology, trying to get him to meet me, trying to find out why. I had a million questions. I was mentally, emotionally broken. And I had got up one day and I said, I need answers. I texted him very early that morning. I said, you need to ring me urgently. On that day, I went to pick Becky up at lunchtime, and just as she got into the car, he called us. And he said, where are you? And we recorded the call. I needed concrete evidence that I wasn't losing my mind
that this was my reality, that what was actually happening and unfolding was real. And I knew that there was nobody that I could tell this to that was going to think that I was in any way sane. There were so many elements to it, and it was so enormous. There is no way anyone would have believed it. That call was not recorded for revenge, for spite, for anything like that. It was recorded because I was traumatized, I was heartbroken, and I was confused. He knew I recorded it. He knew I was recording it. He said I could do what I liked with it. He said, you can blackmail me if you want. I said, I won't blackmail you, but I will do what I feel right for me. I was so angry. I was weeks left waiting for answers. And the call that's doing the rounds, that is not actually the call. I shared that call with my family and my close friends. And wherever or however, that call has now been edited multiple times. It has been leaked, which I can categorically tell you, we did not leak it. And it has been changed and chopped on the internet, and everyone has an opinion on it. That call is a moment in time to a background that has huge, devastating effects that are going to last a long, long time for the people involved in that call. And it's cruel to share edited pieces without knowing the background and the actual facts. And, you know, to have people saying that, you know, judging it when they don't know, that is a tiny percentage of the reality of what we are all facing.
Looking back now, Tina, do you have regrets?
It's funny, the one question that he answered that I couldn't believe, he was asked, did he regret marrying me? And he said no. And I think that was the most cruel statement of his interview. He stole my life. He has destroyed my life. So do I regret? I regret meeting him. I regret going into a relationship with him. I regret ignoring every one of them red flags. I regret marrying him. I regret putting all of my working years into excelling his career because he didn't have a career when I met him. I regret believing everything he told me. And I regret what he has done in the last 2 weeks.